Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody who is joining us, who is viewing the stream that we're doing live today. It's my great pleasure to welcome again our colleague, our dear partner, our valued guest, and an expert in regenerative architecture, is what we call it right now, or integrated. There are many discussions around it for sure. So it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Carl Welty, architect and the principal and founder of Carl Welty Architects based in Los Angeles in California. And already the geography can tell you a little bit about maybe the specialty of Carl and his team and his designs. And that's really also a little bit the core, the bottom line that we want to discuss in our session today, which is about green building certification. So when we were preparing for this session, we had pretty much uh, interesting discussion and exchange with Carl, as always, on the importance and the differences and the different codes and standards and certifications that you can obtain, and the value, the true value behind them. So maybe let's start, Carl, with a little different format than what we do usually. Of course, we want to see also a case study from your work, where we see a little bit more on a LEED Platinum certified building, where we're going to talk more about the details. But let's just go a little bit from the broader perspective at this topic. What are the your experiences in terms of certifications that you apply in your work, also in the years that you are now doing this, that you're involved in such projects, and which ones do you follow? Which ones are for you the kind of North Star, if we can call it this way?
Thank you. It's very nice to be with you. Always exciting to be part of your conversations. I think it's the certification process that I find most inspiring is the Living Building Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure people know about it. It's much more rigorous for people who are maybe less familiar with it. It's often
Mm-hmm.
described as LEED Platinum on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're going to talk about a LEED Platinum house that I designed. But to me, more importantly, it's a passive solar house. It's for me, it's the what's most important for us as architects is making buildings more energy efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And if a certification, if you're on the road to the better buildings and it's a certified building, fine. But I actually have concerns that certifications don't focus on energy sufficiently. What I do know, both BREEAM and the Living Building Challenge have something in common that LEED does not do. I still don't think it does, which you have to demonstrate and document the energy performance after 12 months. And so I really that to me is I guess that's a North Star. That would be to me as a really critical criteria for how good a building is.
Definitely. So, if we should also compare, I mean, you mentioned the Living Building Challenge and Living Building Europe. I mean, greetings with this to Carlo Battisti and his team. That we also work together, looking at biophilia and kind of combining all the petals. No, they work with petals, how you choose the materials and all the structures that are connected. So, pretty fascinating concept. But if we should compare it also maybe with some upcoming certificates, so these are the LEED, BREEAM, Living Building Challenge. It's something like that is almost like known. Then there are also some new certifications like EDGE, which is appearing. Is it something that is discussed in the sector, in the industry, or how do you become aware that yes, that's a new way to get this building validated, verified, and how much do you have as also maybe a power as a community, as architects, as people from the industry to kind of say, hey, this is maybe more meaningful. I mean, is there any kind of mechanism for that? How is that being decided?
Um, Actually, I'm not familiar with Edge. Is Edge something from Europe or
Yes, it's a relatively new one. I was recently reading about it. We're gonna prepare maybe a little post about that. But yeah, it's
like to learn more. Um, in any of these, to me, I just am so convinced that it's about energy, energy, energy,
mm,
and and I don't and certifications processes the design profession. I think we need to do a much better job at focusing on energy, and this comes from, if everything I can tell, if buildings are contribute 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions and 40% of the energy, and 40% of that 40% is thermal comfort and heating and cooling. That's a huge part of the energy and greenhouse gas pie. And so any kind of certification process that needs to be upfront, the highest priority. Um, and I
mm,
don't think our profession does that well enough.
mhm. And when looking at the projects that you were also involved, is there any other aspects that you kind of take into this energy nexus that are connected with this energy nexus that you kind of consider or work with? I mean, you were pretty much involved also with land planning, land development.
Mhm.
How does that come together, or what is the relation over there?
Maybe I add one comment about an insight that I find kind of important point. The University of California, which is perhaps the largest um, university system in the world. I mean, California has more universities. I mean, California is a huge powerhouse in universities. UC California is kind of the crown jewel.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's 10 campuses. So the University of California has a policy that all of their LEED buildings and most of their new buildings are LEED certified. But in addition to the LEED certification, they have to. Um, uh, in California, we there's a requirement, a state requirement, of to document energy performance, and we call it that. There's a calculations and the documentation that has to be done to get a building permit. I mean, if it's an addition to a house, it's required. So it's the measuring stick that we use in California for determining energy performance, and we
Mhm.
talk about it as a percentage over baseline normal. So California, UC California, has a requirement that all their LEED buildings have to be at least 28% better than normal,
Mhm.
which and that doesn't equate directly to 28% more energy efficient. It's sort of not exactly one on one, but it's some level. Um, that's um, that's a high bar. I would uh, there's not enough LEED buildings that achieve that level.
Mhm.
Um, the LEED Platinum house that we designed in Santa Monica,
Mhm.
and that was this now been years. It was one of 6 houses that City of Santa Monica was used as a case study program, and our client got some grant money.
Mhm.
Um, but in that process, when we were going through that, a person in our office, in talking with the LEED certifier, uh, told him that our Title 24 calculations were coming back at 75% better than normal. And I mean, it's such a funny story because when she told him that, it was kind of like a joke thing. He said, I'm sorry, I don't think I heard that right. Because it was so 75% better than normal is so far above anything he'd seen. It was the highest number he'd seen over baseline Title 24 was 50%. So this house was 50% over, 50% more than the highest thing he'd ever seen.
Mhm.
Probably most of the houses, probably not over 15% over baseline. So it's possible to do, but we don't do it enough. We
Mm.
don't get the energy performance um, sufficient to them. Since you asked me the question, so that in land planning,
Mm.
a really important insight that comes from John Lyle, who is the founder of the John Lyle Center for Regenerative Studies at Cal Poly Pomona, who is one of the founders of this idea of regenerative design. He spoke very well that really good energy efficient design starts with the land planning in the orientation.
Mm.
And for me, it gets pretty clear that if you don't work with orientation, the building's not going to be more than 50% better than normal. And that's not the Title 24. That's just kind of data that we use internationally as a percentage over a baseline normal. And so, and I shared my list with you, Jana, that there are very few buildings. I would bet a good cup of coffee that there are no buildings that are more than 50% better than normal that don't have the orientation correct, that don't have these
Mm.
few simple principles of passive solar incorporated into the architecture.
Well, I
So
mean, mm.
it's doable, but we don't do it enough.
So this is a super interesting thing, and I believe we're going to go much deeper on that with going through the case study, looking at the elements, kind of getting more insights on the practicality or on the technical aspects as well. But when we have these discussions on certification and of course developing projects, etc., many times it's not only investors but also private people that kind of have this as a thought, have a building certified. But is there any actual, I'll be a little bit provocative, is there any value for the investor, for the developer to have a building certified? What is your take on that?
There's some reporting in the industry that people who have, office building, for example, that have their LEED certified, they charge a premium. They get a bit more, 10, 15% more money in rent or value in selling. So that's kind of all the evidence that I have. I think most of the Living Building Challenge buildings, they're done by academic institutions or foundations, and there's the value is sort of a symbolic
Mm-hmm.
symbolic value of that there's a commitment to the environment.
I got you. Yeah, so I mean, it's also a pretty interesting thing because it's an investment that you need to make as a developer to have this certified, have the building certified, have the project certified. Maybe you get some financing support, maybe you get some grants, etc., that recognize the ambition to contribute. But yeah, I found it always kind of interesting to come into these discussions and have really this aspect of it's a symbolic thing. And the question is, I mean, why or how could we make it more feasible, more practical for people to invest into that, and of course doable.
I'll be the ornery old man here. I think the conversation to get more people to do the right thing, and the right thing is using less energy, less resources,
Mm.
is we make a case for buildings that have extraordinary performance using less energy that don't cost more to build. So a downside of certification is it does increase the cost. It increases the cost of the professional costs,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also it's kind of baked into the marketing that buildings need to you need to spend more money to achieve those certification.
Mm.
And I hope that I'm just talking to straight here. So there's a really wonderful building and design for a local water conservation agency,
Mm-hmm.
and we were on our way to LEED Platinum, um, this is a footnote. That building was our first Title 24 calculations had it at 60% better than normal. That's twice as good as California, UC California's highest goal. So it's impressive. But we did not do that. It was not so hard to do because we paid attention to some window issues, some roof systems we used. But our clients, because they had associations with another water agency in the region, who had just finished a LEED Platinum building, and the building went way over budget, and they said, and so they didn't want to do it because they believed that LEED equals more money, which it does. And I mean, to be really honest about the profession, I think we need to be honest with ourselves. And is certification worth alienating clients, private clients, corporate clients? Because I think when they believe that it costs more money to do it, then they're not doing it. And I think the better for the planet if we make a case that making buildings that are more efficient, that don't cost more to build, that's the right direction. And that the house our LEED Platinum house, our clients have still probably have used no energy for thermal comfort, a pretty easy thing to do in Santa Monica. But I have other examples of buildings that are very efficient, high-performing buildings in all climate zones, and some of these buildings I know that they cost no more to build or less to build, and that's to me that's absolutely more important than certification. So I think that's a struggle with the certification process. In a concluding statement, we are not going to save ourselves on this planet if green design is a luxury. Not going to happen. We can't do it if only 10% can afford it.
I mean, that's a wonderful bridge to the next part of the presentation. So let's have a look on this beautiful case study with this amazing energy performance. You mentioned 78% above average.
75% over baseline Title 24.
So that's amazing already. Let's do not take this 3%, whatever the discrepancy. So let's go into the project. Let's start from.
So the best thing to look at the first picture and then the plan.
Let's go from the beginning, or.
Yeah. So in addition to basic passive solar design principles that some of the diagrams showed, where you want to get most of your glass facing south, you use a roof overhang to shade the glass in the summer to reduce heat gain. These are the things that make buildings 50% or better, more efficient than normal. This house was probably about 5% more than a normal house, so not too bad. One of the particularly hold it right there. So one of the things about Santa Monica, this site, is that the city of Santa Monica's street grid is 45 degrees off from true south, so this is a side lesson. So one of the if you were to Google like why architects don't adopt more solar oriented design, usually there's two reasons. One is you have to have the optimal site, and the other is what about existing buildings? Both of those, I have plenty of examples or thoughts about how to do that. But this house shows how to do it when the site is not ideal, and you just have to be a little creative. So you see in the plan that the plan is sort of a sawtooth. So many of the walls are not parallel to the side property line, which doesn't seem like rocket science. It's just you make the commitment to make it energy efficient, and you create a design that's a little bit different, but it works. Um, yeah, I literally had a conversation with a city planner in Santa Monica about another project where I incorporated some of these same lessons with a wall to face south that was 45 degrees from the property line. And I first described the house for this planning process as a passive solar house. And I don't know if you want. And she thought I should not use the word passive solar because there's no certification for it. And can I say horseshit?
It's an alternative.
It's I'm just being for. And so when architects they put in front of high performance principles that have been around for thousands of years that continue to produce buildings that are 2 and 3 times more efficient than more expensive certified buildings, we have a problem. And she actually, that's okay. She in the end, she described the building, because I had one wall that was 45 degrees off from the property line, as irregular geometry. And so to bring it back to certification. So perhaps a starting point with certification is make a note. The prime most important geometry is facing the sun. And if you don't do that, and as John Lyle said, if you don't face the sun correctly, your building's not going to get over 50% unless you spend a lot of money. I don't know if it needs to be said, this performance that I'm talking about, this is not including solar panels. This is about how the building envelope itself performs. Then you can add solar panels to provide electricity. So just to make that clear. I mean, you can make a, and people do. People can make a bad building, a building that doesn't perform very well, an energy hog, we might say, and you might make it look good if you have, 3 and 4 times solar panels than you might rather need. So anyway, so this building, so the one big lesson is, in addition to its energy performance, which to me is, it's not a big mystery. You just work with the sun, and people, if they're not familiar with these principles, just Google passive solar design, Google Persian wind cooling towers. But so the lesson here is that you really can make a passive solar building that's 2 and 3 times, like 50% better than anything this other guy had ever seen, on a site that's not ideal. It just takes a little creativity, which is what we're supposed to be about.
Yes, I mean, I absolutely agree. And what was the water approach that you used for this property? I mean, how was water integrated in? We were talking before about the water energy nexus. How does that come together in this concept? That you have a very interesting part of that we were just before. It's a little bit moving presentation, so
yeah,
apologies for that. It's a little bit dynamic. If you're not fast with reading, you will lose it. But maybe you can stop.
Well, I put my website in the chat, but so there's a cistern. Yeah, there's one picture of we created a cistern, and that in itself did not contribute to LEED or LEED Platinum, I don't think, very much. But it came about because our clients wanted to do something. They wanted a passive solar home. Actually, they wanted a passive solar home because they were both retired doctors, ear, nose, and throat doctors. So they wanted a passive solar home, so they didn't have to have a conventional air conditioning system that blew air around, because it reduces the indoor air quality, which is part of, indoor air quality is important. But so if people want to do, optimize indoor air quality, they might consider passive solar design that doesn't require so much air movement. But anyway, so the cistern was something we incorporated because the city of Santa Monica required homes to hold back a certain amount of water to
Mm.
reduce stormwater runoff, and creating a cistern was an easy. It was more expensive than the typical system that people use in Santa Monica, but because the requirement was sort of already required something, they decided to use a cistern to recycle the water to recover the rainwater.
Mhm.
Um, so
So, looking at this design, Carl, maybe we can just wrap it up. What were the key features that contributed to the certification, to achieving the LEED Platinum certification? If you
well,
look at,
the energies of the energy performance is certainly helped, but it's a concern I have with LEED is that it's not a large enough part of the requirements. But there was a high level of recycled materials. You
Mhm,
saw on the pictures it was constructed of a material, these blocks made out of recycled styrofoam
mhm,
and filled with concrete. Which
right.
so there was so there's so in addition to the stuff that's a bit unusual is the solar oriented design, energy performance. Beyond that, there was we paid attention to finishes, low toxic finishes.
Mhm. That got you the points. And was there any also, because you mentioned in this water regeneration project that you had, there was also financing. Is it also available? Is there any kind of support, governmental support, financial support for homeowners, apologies, or developers that decide to go this direction to have
I
a new?
don't think there's any direct.
Hmm.
There is no direct government support for certification.
Hmm.
There's some, as I said before, there's some market forces that with particularly commercial buildings that are had certification that the property value or the rent that they can get is a
Hmm.
bit higher than the industry standards.
Hmm.
But there's no financial benefits from the government. Um, there has been there's some funding assistance tax rebates for solar panels and battery backup systems in California, but
Hmm.
being those are being reduced, but those are kind of outside of certification.
Mhm. And what is the reason? I mean, why is it? Is the support, the governmental support, now when we have like 2 more minutes on the discussion, or to discuss this part? Uh, is there such a why is what is the logic of having now this support, this kind of incentive to for for people building or having the right projects, healthy, green, efficient homes? Why is it now being reduced? What is your thinking
Why
of
is
that?
it like the tax incentives for solar panels?
Mm-hmm.
Um, 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 I think that they're just looking at other budget constraints and other
Mm-hmm.
um, um, I have questions about the motive or the value of getting tax benefits for people who install battery backup systems.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, they don't come from okay, there's a place for battery backup systems, and yeah, and there's also some
Mm-hmm.
questions about are batteries really as green as we think they are because of cobalt mining and all those things, and those
Mm-hmm.
are really important issues to discuss. But for me, I would think that California has provided tax benefits for people who install battery backup systems because Tesla and companies that sell them lobby the state legislators and convince them that that's a way to save the planet. I don't think it's saving the planet as much as we'd like to think. But sorry to sound cynical, but tax incentives for solar panels and battery backups, um, it's a little bit of greenwashing.
I see. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Yes, I mean it's a very interesting topic, and definitely the resources demand. I mean, we do not have a our advisors, the people that we really like to work with, that are deep in ecology and system thinking and all the connections, and it's very interesting to understand their perception of things, how it all impacts basically the results which we're having, and how can we really create this thriving green future that we all somehow are kind of going for, in a way, some
Yeah.
more, maybe more or less, but it's definitely an issue that we need to transparently address, and kind of be open about that. And it's not one solution, and this is why we also have the tendency to always go back to low-tech solutions, always talk about this, show these alternatives, educate people, because it's many times a forgotten part. So
Yeah.
you are kind of the lead. We always talk about passive solar design, and it's always on your agenda, and once we look at their performance, the results, it's then very clear why is it so important for you to talk about, to share this message.
Yeah.
So this is something that certainly should be more present in planning and development of sites, cities, or
Yep.
buildings in general.
In closing,
Mhm.
one of my favorite go-to examples of passive solar or natural systems or ancient wisdom
Mm.
are Persian wind cooling towers. That, if people don't know what a Persian wind cooling tower is, I invite them to Google them. They're quite amazing. The Persians started building these 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. There are other examples of systems for increasing ventilation. Um, but the oldest Persian wind cooling towers are 600 to 800 years old. These towers reduce the indoor air temperature by 12 degrees centigrade, which is pretty impressive. And they use absolutely no energy. And these towers that are 600 to 800 years old, which are reducing the temperature by 12 degrees centigrade without any system, which there are no LEED buildings that do this. There are very few.
Mm.
Those towers have not been the things about those towers that make them help them keep the temperature cooler. They have not been fixed in 600 years. So that resiliency part of it is impressive. And then just in closing, um, um, if it's to be very clear, and people can argue with this point, but you don't get above 50% better than normal without the proper orientation and a few other principles.
Mm.
But as far as I know, this thing that could contribute the most to our reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and energy, you get 2 points for LEED, maybe 3 points. You get more points for a bicycle rack. So I think that, to be, hello LEED people, fight me if you want, but that's a problem. If you only get 2%, I think you need 100 points, almost 100 points to get LEED platinum. If you're only
Mhm.
getting 3 points, maybe for that, that can reduce it by 50%. That's a big question in my mind
That,
that needs to
that's
be answered.
that's a very interesting prioritization of the impact. So thank you so much, Carl, for being today here with us, sharing your design, sharing your project. We have a reference to your website for those of you that enjoyed this session. Please have a look on our YouTube archive. There is certainly a session with Carl Welty on ancient building methods, which you certainly will enjoy and find some interesting information in. And it's a little bit of learning from the old, combining the new, and being ready for what is the kind of things that are coming with these changing conditions that we are already experiencing. So thank you so much for taking the time and being today here with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for letting me
As
speak
always.
frankly.
As always, and yeah, it's sharing awareness, and you can of course go to carlweltyarchitects.com if you like to have a look on the portfolio of Carl and his team. But of course, we're also linked over Frogeex, so whenever there is a question or you would like to consult maybe a project, more than happy to, if you, or more than welcome if you like to reach out. With this, thank you so much, and I see you all on the next one. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.